Welcome, everybody, to our monthly training call for our sacred self-healing community, the Nspirience, the inner experience of our higher self, to help us better understand these harmonic issues that we run into with ourselves. And we will talk about how harmony influences our life and the process of reaching or getting to harmony, which we call balancing, how that has a lot to do with this word. So as always, we go through the terminology and we're going to talk about the different components of this, but everything is energy. So we are going to have a deeper look into the holistic meaning of harmony. Holistic obviously means the bigger picture, the whole picture, the more holistic picture. So before we begin the talk, let's hear from you guys what harmony means to you. Who would like to offer their definition of harmony? What does it mean to you in your life, in these different areas of life, maybe all of them together? What does harmony mean to you? Or what does it feel like to you? After all, this is all about the inner experience that we're discussing here. Or perhaps you can't describe what harmony is, but you can describe what the absence of harmony is, when things feel disharmonic. Yes. Justine, you want to share?
Well, immediately, thank you, actually. I love the word. And when I hear it, I immediately think of music, harmonic music. So the blending of things where it flows and connects. And, if there's one sound that's not in harmony, then you can really spot it and hear it. But if you have 1,000 sounds all blending together, they just come out as one song. So when something is not harmonic in our life, I just think it's not blending in. It sticks out. It's something that requires attention.
I love that definition. That's really, really cool. Thank you for sharing that with us, Justine. So obviously, the musical harmony is very familiar to all of us, and that's probably the most classical of all definitions. I've kind of left this out here in my collection of different definitions of harmony, but I like how you accentuate the together part. I mean, something sticks out, and that something that sticks out that needs attention, as you said, is something that somehow creates some kind of disharmony or imbalance. It somehow doesn't flow together. The togetherness is somehow disturbed. Would that be fair to say? It's very mental right now, right? But we're just sort of spontaneously discussing what harmony means to us. There's a together component, there's an agreement, or something like an accord, something that feels like it belongs together. What other, adjectives would you assign to harmony? If you think away from music, yes, alignment, I like that, Not in a musical sense, but more so in a holistic sense. Sustainable, agreement, we had that. Compatible, it's something positive, right? Something calm, something silent, maybe peaceful. So there's something rhythmic, flow, yeah, without resistance, right? It's interesting, a lot of words in my mind that come up kind of go into the place of describing something that is not harmonic. So it's like harmony is really something, yes, it's a feeling, exactly, Becky. It's not something that we could clearly define. The only time when we know that something is really harmonic is when it's not disharmonic, isn't it? That's why I love these talks, because it's so important that we go into the investigation, because those are words we use, especially when we do this spiritual talk or this consciousness talk. We use these words, and we sometimes forget to actually feel into them. Yeah, it feels loving, peaceful. Yeah, so this is a very cool collection here of how this feels to us. I browsed the internet, I asked Google, and picked various definitions here, different quantities, a sense of agreement. That seems to be the most sterile, sort of clinical definition. Harmony is of something. Harmony of something is the way in which its parts are combined into a pleasant arrangement. I like that. How that's Webster Merriam, actually. Yes, it's in. Julian is commenting here, connection in a wave. Harmony is usually defined feelings, actions, relationships, opinions, interests. It denotes a state of balance among forces influencing and even opposing one another. Can there be harmony if there are what do you guys think? Can there be a harmony in opposing poles, or something that is sort of a polar opposite? Oh, sound is dropping out. Okay. Is it okay now? Yeah, I saw something. I don't know what it was. I saw that too. I just didn't know. Like now, okay. So can something be in harmony even if it's opposing? What do you guys think?
Well, I'm back on again. I think of dancing. So the ebb and flow, the push and pull, and yet it can be so graceful, so beautiful, but going different directions, and the what's the word, yielding and guidance. Like that's harmony, and yet there's many directions, and yet it all flows.
I like that. I also like the picture of an ebb and flow. Kind of goes in, comes out, comes in. It's harmony is not static, right? Yin yang. That's right. Yeah. There is a harmony when it's balanced. Yes. So when it's balanced, then opposites, or in or out, or how Justine just described this, can still be in harmony. Julianne brings in the picture of a willow that bends with the wind. So maybe things can be in harmony when they complete another, for instance, when they're complementary, when they are balancing, like Heather said. So the result of bringing what was previously in disharmony back into balance. So can we agree that harmony is not necessarily when everything is the same? On the contrary, it can actually come in when two things are completely opposite. Yeah, or when they are not of the same. Yes, I like that, Julian. Allowing what is to be. It's like when neither one of them tries to overpower the other. Yeah. I think that also works with the picture of the dancing really well. There's no domination. There's no more or superior and inferior, or yeah, we're just like literally collecting all these different descriptors, just going through all these different areas of life. Yes, it's also, harmony also describes a natural order of things. Yeah, if we, for example, think of ecology, right? The way things work in nature, where we have all the, the circle of life, and it can sometimes feel in the moment perhaps quite a bit upsetting or something when we look at it from an emotional point of view. But if we look at it from a bigger picture point of view, or from like a natural balance point of view, then we can recognize that it's all in harmony. Yes, synergy, Carol, I like that. Synergy. What does synergy mean? It's a very important word for me. That is, Carol, would you like to share? What do you feel? What does synergy mean to you? Synergy. It's a very important word. Does anybody have a visual with synergy? Synergy is kind of like all of what we just described, right? It's when things kind of swing together, when two energies working together. And oftentimes the word synergy is also used in context with when the part or the sum of two, when the sum of two working together is more than just the two parts. Yeah. So very big words here, and without even having used words such as frequency or anything like that, obviously we can go there, but I find it important that we actually stay with those feelings that we can all relate to. Interplay, I like that too. Yes, it's symbiotic. Yeah, symbiotic is also an important word, like synergy. It's like it allows everything to be without bringing the other out of balance. It's actually quite supportive. It's very sustaining. Yeah, I like the analogy that Julian is making here with the water cycle. There's no more or less water on the planet, and yet it appears that there's droughts or that there's floods here or there. But the bigger picture always seems to show that there's a, within all this ebb and flow and, in breaths and out breaths, yeah, that a balance is maintained. So let's talk about what balance is then. Obviously, the internet has a few different definitions to offer. A steady position or condition that works with all the things that we worked out. Obviously, it's also an instrument of weighing, so we can see the scales, right, that are trying to keep things in balance. I always see a seesaw of some sort, or teeter-totter, as I just recently learned from one of you. Number 3, a state in which things occur in equal or proper amounts. Okay, we all know it's not always the amount. Yeah, it's often also, it's not just quantitative, it's also qualitative, but obviously these are just sort of different offerings of definitions. It can also be a leftover, what remains. So after everything is done and put together, you know, there can be leftover remaining balance. So balance is the result of balancing what was previously in imbalance. So we're seeing a connection here between the word balance, because that seems to be part of the process, whereas harmony is the overall state. So let's refer all this, let's bring all this into connection with health, holistic health. Again, the internet here offers a person's mental or physical condition. That's very clinical. Medicine says it's the state of being free from illness or injury. This is interesting for me as an energy worker, as an energy healer, to describe the presence of something through the absence of the opposite is not sufficient for me. This is where I see, this is my personal opinion, a weakness in the current Western medical model to see health as the absence of illness or disease. What are some of your thoughts about that when it comes to physical health? Do you agree with describing health as the absence from illness, or would you like to offer a different kind of definition of health? Would like to offer a different view, different from this definition, without using a negation. You were really good with describing harmony earlier without using the negation. You implied it, but you didn't use it to define it. How would you describe health instead? What do you think is a better definition of health?
I'll take a first try at it, if I may.
So go ahead.
Oh, I just want to make I love this. I mean, I actually taught health for several years, and I used to always put a slide up with a teeter-totter and, you know, show that old definition, you know, illness and wellness. But what I was encouraging people to see was that teeter-totter was just all wellness. And you can have a little bit of wellness, a lot of wellness, and like optimal wellness, like to see it about wellness, not about disease. So it's a bit of a quantum leap to think it that way or to view it that way, but seeing that we are well, but we can always be more well. I don't know, that's just, it's not a pure definition. It's a conceptual.
What you're doing is, and it's not actually a quantum leap, this is actually, you know, fundamentals of Chinese medicine. Julian can attest this for us. This is actually a very old way of thinking, all right, that it's a realm. Yeah, that health is a realm. It's something that can be measured. Yeah, and yeah, actually, Julianne, would you like to bring in the professional definitions? Yes, so this is the clinical definition. Here's the body's ability to maintain and come back into homeostasis. That's what Julianne is writing here. Homeostasis being that place where basically a self-sustaining place where the body can optimally function. And yes, of course, if we think this in a bit more holistic way, obviously we can see that it's a realm, because what is sustainable for you or what feels like optimal to you might not feel optimal to me, right? So this isn't an absolute state, but there is, of course, a state that we can define, you know, for the human body from a medical standpoint as optimal, and that is when, you know, the different aspects of physiology, when they are working in harmony together. So harmony denotes a state of balance among, you know, different forces, different systems interacting, or perhaps even influencing another, or perhaps even opposing another. Within our body, we have a lot of systems that oppose another, where one part, just think of adrenaline, insulin, and cortisol. They all work, well, more or less with and against another. They're there to you know, trigger another and to balance another out. The same with our immune system. All right, so there's a lot of talk about our immune system these days, and many of you know this. Jeff and I had a bunch of radio and TV interviews about the etheric or energetic immune system, because the current definition of immune system refers to the materialistic aspect of our physicality only. And anybody who has studied holistic health understands that it is not just the physical condition, it is also the mental, the emotional, and spiritual condition, and also these forces that obviously work on these levels within that realm, okay, yeah, that determine a person's state of health, that determine a person's state of balance. Latest till the 70s, you know, 50 years ago, it was acknowledged by the medical community that there was something like psychosomatics, for instance, and medicine, or the medical science, is now developing into another level of that, namely recognizing the combination between neurology, but, you know, genetics, biology, physiology, and psychology. And this is a really new field here that those of us who have been studying holistic health are intuitively familiar with. Health from an holistic point of view, not the clinical holistic health definition, but from an energetic point of view, is an inner congruence and harmony with all aspects of our life, physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, spiritually, and energetically. Feeling healthy means to feel balanced and whole. Means to feel in some kind of harmony. So what are these different layers that contribute, or not layers, but these different components, yeah, of this overall, you called it wellness, Justine. I call it harmony, because it is, after all, if you break it down and really investigate it, yeah, if you investigate our body, yeah, the being of us and its components, you'll find, and this is something that you guys are used to, you won't find this anywhere else really, of 5 different levels of existence. Obviously, the physical level, that's the body. Then we have the emotional, yeah, that's our heart, body, our heart field. Then the mental, which is the mind. Then the spiritual, which we could call the spirit in us. And then the energetic, which isn't exactly the soul, but the higher expression of the energetic could be seen as the soul aspect. It is the etheric aspect of us that exists beyond our physical, emotional, mental existence. It is tied to the spiritual in ways that I wanted to discuss with you here today. But it is holding all of the others together. All right, so there's a bit of a hierarchy here, and you've seen a different graph, the densities of our energy bodies, which I have also structured in this way, namely the densest part of our bodies, the densest body, of our 5 bodies at the bottom, because it is the one that we wake up in. It is the one whose needs we cannot for long disregard without actually feeling this imbalance, what we could then call illness or disease. We can go with emotional, mental, spiritual, and energetic imbalances for a little longer, but they will all eventually end up in the densest part of our body. So let's talk about this a little bit. What these different bodies that we are composed of, how they play out, and what these mechanisms are within these bodies that help us to balance things. So let's start with one here, with the physical. All right, so the physical doesn't really need to describe. We all have a body. We can look at it right now. We know it's there. It's in the scene. It comes with a bunch of senses, usually 5 senses, that give us signals, visual, tactile, olfactory, auditory, and the taste of the sense of tasting. So these are all things that we can perceive on a physical level in our body. That densest part of our existence here also has a protection mechanism. Do you guys know what that's called? What's the protection mechanism of our body called? To bring things that are in danger of getting into imbalance on a pure physical level back into balance on a pure physical level. Immune system. Yes. So our immune system is there when this has nothing to do with our volition. It has nothing to do with our psychology. Our immune system responds without us, having to do it. There's no part of our personal awareness linked to that. It just does. Okay, so we all have, as we've recently learned, where we have T cells and we have spike proteins and all these kind of weird things that usually only biochemists know. And they do stuff. They do things to antigenes, to viruses or germs, or any kind of things that happen in our body on a microbiological level that we are not aware of, but they keep us healthy. They allow us to survive cuts and fractures and stuff like that. And then there's obviously, you can break this down to our lymph system, to our circulatory system, to our blood cells, to our DNA, and all that. So this is our body's immune system. We're all aware of it. Now, what about our emotions? Justine, when I said what is our body's own protection mechanism, you answered ego. That's not correct. But what about when it comes to our emotions? What would you say is your own protection mechanism for dealing with life? And we can call it psychologically, but psychologically also includes the mental. So mental is often, this combination of physical, emotional, and mental. So on a pure emotional level, yes, Becky, this is correct. We have a fight, flight, or freeze, which is not exactly emotional, but right there in between. It's still part of our involuntary system. It's more or less regulated by our amygdala, the part in us that is often called sort of the animalistic part of our brain. It's instinct based. So we have instincts, and they're you know, for the different classes of species relatively similar. So all mammals have very similar instincts, all birds, all reptilians, and so forth. So in our case, we have a fight, flight, or freeze that is more or less, you know, that more or less is our fail-safe, so to speak, that's supposed to jump in when things happen to us that could potentially harm our physical. So our immune system, our physical immune system is not really involved in that. It's more like an emotional immune system. It's a fail-safe. And that's more like an ego, although it is involuntary for the most part. So our emotional immune system is basically the fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah, that's important to understand. What about mentally? What does our system use as protection mechanism mentally to process life? What kind of mental immune systems do we have? Sleep is not exactly correct, Heather. It does play a role. I would like to take this aside and talk to you guys about the importance of sleep here in a little bit, and which different immune systems are affected by sleep. Yes, Becky, that's right. We have denial, we have justification, we have rationalization, right? We can rationalize things. We can choose to check out, right? Or not. It's not always voluntary. Obviously, part of our self-discovery and self-healing journey is to make it more voluntary, yeah, because that's also where we recognize, yeah, Julianne is calling it our pathways, where we recognize our habits, right? Habits, conditionings, beliefs, yeah. So we have a physical immune system that operates on a cellular level. We have our emotional immune system that operates more or less on a neurological level. We have our mental immune system that operates on the level of ego mind, as we all often call this. It operates mostly through conditioning, whereas the emotional immune system mostly works through instincts. And that's why instincts, and often also what some people call intuition, isn't really that sophisticated, guys. It's still pre-programmed. So there's a lot of pre-programs in us, yeah, like sort of defaults, okay, that we all work with, that we all encounter, right? I mean, the whole entire Nspirience course is all about out-vibrating them, because we've already detected that if we want to get into higher levels of spiritual or sort of soul level harmony, these pre-programmed protection mechanisms that we have can often be in the way. Yes, how can they be in the way? Exactly, Julianne, through coping habits that we have. So our mental immune system is often, you know, really characterized by our conditioning and habits. Yeah, this is also why this is so difficult sometimes, because you know, this protection mechanism, this mental immune system is supposed to keep us safe psychologically. It's supposed to prevent that we're going crazy, and so the ego mind creates constructs, all right, models abstractions with which it sort of recreates a virtual harmony. Yeah. So things can feel very real on that level, but they don't necessarily are true. They can be virtually real. And coping is such a way, where we through soothing ourselves, or through certain activities, or sometimes substances, or simply behaviors, conditioned or habitual behaviors, try to reinstate sort of mental balance. But Heather, you're absolutely right. And if we look at how some of these habits and these behaviors, and they can be physical behaviors, such as the food we eat, the amount of water we drink, the amount of sleep we have, they can severely impact our mental health and our emotional health. And this is why when we guys talk about sort of the density of our body and the density of our ego, and trying to out vibrate it, we can see the physical, emotional, and mental they're hardwired through a lot of these pre-programs, and a lot of these individual components can affect the other components. So the physical can be severely impacted by our emotional, and our emotional can be severely impacted by our mental. Our physical can also be impacted by our mental. So this is the whole class of psychosomatics. Somatics in and of itself describes the storage of some kind of psychological impact, emotional or mental, onto our body. So that's no longer a question, that there is a hardwire here between these three. That's why I call the overall part of us here that connects these three often the body-mind, because the body-mind thinks in terms of these pre-programmed conditionings. Okay. Now, you might find it a little difficult that the word heart is here, because I often use the word heart as a symbol for a more mindful, a more spiritual oriented perspective. That's because ultimately heart would be the higher expression of emotional. So emotional is the more pre-programmed part, but heart is actually the organ, not the physical organ, but the energetic organ that regulates our emotions, that regulates our emotional states, but with it also, because of the hardwire, some of these physical and mental conditions. The reason why I wanted to single out sleep here has to do with the next level, namely with our spiritual health, our spiritual immune system. Yeah, guys, so now we're talking, right? What is our spiritual immune system? Who would like to offer some thoughts here, or some just investigations, or perhaps questions? Yeah, what is a spiritual immune system? What can spiritually protect us from, let's define perhaps first what is spiritual imbalance. Yeah, when a person is spiritually imbalanced, what this could look like. How could a spiritual imbalance play out in a person? What do you guys think? And we're not talking about religion, obviously, but religion offers spiritual models. Okay, so they are prevalent, but they're not necessarily what we mean when we talk about spiritual health. Okay, so yeah, good question. All right, so Denise, you say the imbalance is non-geometry. You mean symmetry, probably. I'm not sure if that's what you mean. I'm not understanding your response quite well. Symmetry, okay. Yeah, but use more simple words, guys. I mean, what is... Yeah, Becky, I like your definition here. Feeling alone, feeling separate. Yeah. when somebody's spiritually imbalanced, that would probably be the simplest way to describe how that subjectively feels. Julianne is offering a new age definition, the ability to transcend the human conditions. Okay, Julianne, let's investigate that. What does that mean? The ability to transcend human conditions.
Like, hey everyone, yeah, to understand where we're at in the moment, like to actually be able to feel out and, you know, recognize that we're in a state, we're out of balance, and to be able to just stop and create space and just take a moment. And that is sort of like reaching homeostasis or balance in, like, okay, this stuff's going on and I can see my human condition, I'm getting pulled out, and also, you know, being pulled into old patterns or who I believe, what I know from my past, and how I've behaved.
Okay, so you're describing what it can do for us. So what a spiritual perspective or spiritual health can do for us. We often call this consciousness, right? But we agree that consciousness is somehow linked to that spiritual level of well-being. What would it look like, Julianne, if there was an imbalance? Becky said, you know, a person could feel that. Yes, exactly, Carol. A person could feel disconnected. A person, that's what Carol described it. Becky described it as alone, separate. So basically, the opposite of what you just said.
Yeah, we get pulled, and we can't get back. We're pulled out.
So is that what you mean with human conditions?
Yeah, human conditions.
So human conditions, I'm just being sort of a little nitpicky here. Do you mean, is this what you're saying, that the human conditions are separate?
Yeah, mind, emotional stuff, imbalances. And we're actually stuck there, and we don't know how to sort of have access to the spiritual, the higher consciousness, or even in the moment, like what is available in the moment to any of us in any moment is where we're at. If we're trapped in for myself, if I'm trapped in my mentalness and my emotional state, I don't have much access, but I have awareness that I can stop, take a breath and recalibrate, because I know I feel really discombobulated and actually in the moment.
So what you're saying is we need a spiritual health to regulate some of these denser levels of well-being. Yeah. So you're making a case for the importance of spiritual health. And I agree with you. I think we all agree with that. But how does spiritual imbalance or spiritual unhealth, a spiritual illness, actually express? How do we know that we are spiritually imbalanced?
Sorry.
Yeah, guys, go ahead. Denise?
I know that one symptom that I can tell that I'm like imbalanced in my spiritually is if I'm feeling not whole, and if I don't feel at ease, if I'm not present, if I feel disconnected, if I don't feel grounded, then that's a sign for me that I'm like imbalanced, and that will apply to the spiritual. And then I could use the other levels, you know, like the physical, to help me ground, and that will help me balance my spiritual.
So you say being present, not being present. That's how you notice when there's some kind of spiritual imbalance. And you also mentioned here in the text something along the lines that there's a sense in you, there's a part in you that recognizes when something is limited. So I like that. It's not something that we need to go into, but just to clarify some of the things that Julienne mentioned with human conditions. Yeah, so there is something about the physical, emotional, mental, yeah, that as pre-programmed as it is, kind of like our autopilot, yeah, our fail-safe. So if we are completely spiritually absent, okay, it'll still function, right? We will perceive it, at least those of us who inquire about it, right? Those of us who want to be aware of it, as somewhat limiting or not present, as you called it, not grounded, not, yes, Heather is describing it as the nervous system being affected. So somehow it has it's more of an overall feeling type of condition, right? So when we call something spiritually imbalanced, and a person doesn't have to believe in God or anything like that to get a sense for that or a feel for that. It usually describes more something holistic. Okay, like whole. You mentioned the word whole. That's where the word holistic comes from. Yeah, it's like something in our overall state doesn't feel balanced, and then we can use the tools on this level. Yeah, mostly, yeah, Julienne gave a good definition that those are all considered to be mindfulness tools or consciousness tools, right? To become more self-aware, to identify or you know, be able to recognize where there is an imbalance and then to reinstate it. So we all are kind of aware what it is, but we never actually defined it in this way. That's why I wanted to do this with you guys. Yeah. So our spiritual protection mechanism is something that we can all feel if we inquire about it, right? Because if we're not present, you guys probably all know what it feels like or can feel like when we're not present. Our body, mind, emotion, they keep functioning, right? So we're not stopping to breathe, but we might not be able to recognize a deeper imbalance unless we actually become present or ask inside. Now, yeah, I just gave it away. I was just going to ask you, whom can I ask? Can I ask you guys or any one of you if I am spiritually imbalanced? Does that work? Not really, yeah. It's a very subjective experience, right? I mean, even things like emotions and thoughts, because we have all these different sort of pretend and fake and false self capabilities. Yeah, they can be sort of smoothed over. We can rationalize things away. But when it comes to spiritual imbalance, that's really not something that someone, unless you're trained in that and unless you inquire about it as an external authority, determine. So our spiritual well-being has a lot to do with our perception. Yeah, this is very important to understand. Our physical, our mental and emotional well-being is easier to detect. That's why we have doctors for that. Yeah, we don't yet have doctors for spiritual health. Not quite yet. We're getting there. What about the immune system that we have here? So we have sort of this subjective experience, the inner experience that can inform us when there's something from a holistic point of view out of balance. What do you guys actually think? And I'm saying think because I too cannot prove this to you other than through my own experience. Yeah, so we're discussing 4 and 5, those levels of well-being, those levels of our being. They are subjective. They can be observed from the outside, but only by people who are trained. But this, I happen to be trained in that, but I want all of you guys to be able to systematically follow the steps and experience this for yourself. What is it that you think, or maybe have experienced yourself, you can report about, functions as something like a spiritual immune system in us? Do you think that we have something like a spiritual immune system? Denise, you say yes. Would you like to those of you who, yeah, okay. Would you like to elaborate on this, Denise? You say, yes, we have a spiritual immune system. That's through our heart connection. Would you like to elaborate on this, or anybody?
Yeah, like if I'm in balance and out of my center and I don't feel connected to my heart, I know that the only way out of that, I don't know, momentaneous spinning out around or not being present, being absent, the only way around is reconnecting with my heart. And through my heart, the medicine will come. Whether I need to slow down or whatever need is unmet, it will be clear because everything slows down.
If there's a lot of emotion stuck there, does it work?
Initially, it does. It does because it helps to slow down. But then there's a follow up. Inner guardians will come. Whether it is, if there's a lot of emotions and I need to release, and release is needed on the physical form, the answer will come. But my first step will be connecting with the heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so heart connection as we define it, yeah, not in this emotional sense, but there is a connection between emotions and heart, because our emotions can block the heart connection, right? So sometimes we will feel spiritually imbalanced if we are blocked in our heart connection, and that can be through either of, or can be influenced by either of these states of being. But it is something that we can use as a tool. We can use our heart as part of our spiritual immune system. Mm-hmm. Can we use our mind as part of our spiritual immune system? What do you guys think? Yeah, that was a little bit of a trick question.
Something, I'm just getting this aha moment, and I know you're going to say, well, I've been trying to teach this for over 10 years. But if our energetic and spiritual health or harmony isn't there, then the rest of it can't be, because but the other parts, I'm trying to put this to words because I can only see it or feel it. The other parts it's just so beautiful, because the other parts have been created by whatever, so that we can be in tune to those things that are less difficult to relate to, which is why I'm having trouble even vocalizing it. But if we're not energetically or spiritually healthy, then the other parts aren't going to be healthy. I could be completely off the wall in this one. Mm-hmm. But what I was going to say earlier is the spiritual. Well, it's actually the same thing. It's integrated into all the other pieces.
It is.
But how wonderful that the denser parts can give us the feedback, mm-hmm. to say that, like you asked about the mind. So, like, there are so many opportunities to put things in balance. Like, that is mm-hmm. such a beautiful system. It's awesome.
It is. Thank you, Justine. Denise is okay. So Julianne says yes. Denise says not really. Yeah, and right there, we get stuck in the duality of our minds, right? Don't we? We've all tried to use our mind to increase our spiritual well-being. We all have. You wouldn't be here if you hadn't urged your mind and your mental capacity to give you answers. So spirit, our spiritual immune system, do you guys know how that works? It works through questions. It works through inquiry, through discovery. And that's why so often when we receive this spiritual impulse, yeah, as a search, do you guys know what I'm talking about? We can't quite put a finger on it, right? But we know something is missing. And it comes to us as this seeking. And it usually comes to us after we've already tried everything to have the perfect body, to be, you know, super popular amongst our friends and have absolute validation and esteem and whatnot in life. And after we've read 50 million spiritual books, we still haven't actually done anything for our spiritual health. Not to say that any of these things aren't helpful. Why are they, or how can they be helpful? Well, we can eliminate things. I don't know about you, but I try to find this spiritual well-being in making as much money as I can. Didn't work. Getting the perfect body didn't work. Having the perfect marriage, the perfect relationship, the perfect kids didn't work. Getting my mind to the highest level that I could intellectually fathom didn't work. Why? Because of what Justine just said. Because it's a less denser part of us, and that means that it permeates more. It permeates everything in a way that the other parts, the denser parts, cannot grasp. So our mind cannot grasp how our spirit permeates these levels. Yeah, it's not downward compatible. We have to grow spiritually to fully understand what spiritual balance is, what it feels like, and how to actively instate it or reinstate it. Yes, and Julian is offering a healing tool here, Grace Mental Heart Fusion. Yes, you're right. That's one of the tools, transmissions, meditations, yoga, breathing techniques, all kinds of things that we can use to find answers. But this is how spirit comes to us, by asking questions, by inquiry, by philosophy is basically the academic version of spiritual asking. Yeah, and there is no absolutes there, because again, it's in the unseen, it's in the subjective experience of things. So we can also see here something that has to do with developmental stages, right? With maturity, with, wisdom. Yeah. There are some things that we can intuitively understand when we're very young. But it takes a while, you know, it takes a certain amount of life experience, a certain amount of training of this inquiry and insight forming that Justine just so beautifully demonstrated to us. Yeah, what happens to us when we have an insight? Yeah, that where our consciousness basically comes into the forefront and shows us how all-encompassing it can be. One spiritual insight can change all of that in a person's life in a heartbeat. Whether we get sick or not, whether we die from something or not, other than old age, whether we experience a heartache or an experience of growth, whether we have a mental or psychotic breakdown or a healing crisis, is determined by our spiritual health, by our training in self-inquiry, by exercising our consciousness and the power that comes with that, which is the power of insight. And with the power of insight comes a new skill set. And that is the power of discerning truth. And Julianne said something earlier. We need that discernment to address things that are not purely physical, and yet that are expressed in the physical. So there are many examples of diseases, illnesses, for example, that cannot just be explained on a cellular or genetic level, on a biochemical level, that cannot just be explained through the emotional, psychological, mental. Because they have to do with beliefs, they have to do with attitude, they have to do with sentiment, they have to do with how a person contextualizes things. Now, I want to share something with you that's something that has to do with the current corona situation, with the pandemic, the virus that has befallen us here as human collective. There's a story, a testimony that I listened to this morning. A medical doctor had a patient, lots of patients, obviously, medical doctor, family practitioner, and he is a family practitioner that, you know, sort of tries to be a good holistic doctor. Okay, so he has a lot of patients who have, you know, more critical thinking and who have a good sort of body awareness, who have a good sort of understanding of the spiritual power, okay, of, you know, that can determine our well-being. And he said he had this one patient. They called him up one day and asked him if he thinks that, you know, if the doctor thinks that he should do anything specific to protect himself from the coronavirus. And the doctor gave him the normal sort of medical response with a holistic spin on it. No, as long as you know, have you know, sort of a balanced immune system, go out in the sun, eat well, drink well, exercise well, and keep yourself in a positive sort of way of thinking, because you have no prior history, nothing, you should be fine. And this patient was very optimistic and didn't really worry too much about things until he came in contact with someone who tested positive. And in that experience, that person who that friend or whatever, that other person that tested positive, he was informed, because of the contact tracing that was done, that he needs to go into quarantine, at least for 5 days. So that's a little longer ago. Now in some countries it's 3 weeks quarantine because of the new variants that are out there. But this person then talked to the doctor the same day, called the doctor and said, I had the health officials here telling me that because I was in contact with this one person, I am now in danger of dying. And even if I'm not in danger of dying, I might be in danger of infecting somebody else. And that's why I have to stay home. And sure enough, a couple of hours after that visitation from they actually had an in-house visitation from these health officials, he started to develop symptoms. And this doctor, this is actually real, guys. This is a video that I listened to this morning. Saw something there. He realized that in that moment where this person felt confronted with the freedom of choice taken away from him, where he felt restriction and lack and fear that was coming in from the outside, that affected his mental and emotional state, he started to develop physical symptoms. And as he was talking to the doctor then said to him, okay, this might as well be the case, but what if that fear, what if that restriction, that's spiritual, it's a subjective experience, right? That overpowering restriction and the powerlessness that came with that, what if that made you sick? I'd love to have a doctor like that. And that's when the patient said, you're right. I started to feel really, really bad when these people told me that I have to stay home now, and that I cannot see anybody, and that I cannot sleep in the same bed with my wife, and that I cannot kiss my kids. That's what started making me sick. And now that you're showing me this, I can feel something in me. I can feel some kind of power in me that wants to reclaim that authority to make those kind of decisions. Due to my own spiritual investigation. What happened was that after that patient hung up with that doctor, he called the doctor the next day and told him that he's completely symptom-free. Something happened in that conversation, in that spiritual inquiry that this patient did together with the doctor. What do you guys think happened there? What's your guess? What do you guys think the doctor did by reflecting on that overall situation and mentioning freedom, love, truth, all these things? What did the doctor do? He didn't give him a medication or anything like that. What did the doctor do? Mind you, this was a medical doctor. Yes, Julia. He was giving the power back, the power of self-choice. He inspired, he empowered the patient. He didn't tell him what to do. Obviously, he's a medical doctor. He could have given him any prescription he wanted, but he didn't do that. He set him free. He didn't heal him. He didn't do anything, to manipulate anything from the outside. He empowered him. Now, what did he empower, guys? What did he empower in him? What in the person did the healing? The inner authority, yes, the freedom of choice, close, close, close. You know that part in a person, in yourself. This entire course is called that way. Yes, sacred self, self-responsibility, self-healing, that's it. That's it, Julian, yes. Self-healing. Self-healing is our spiritual immune system. It's part of our overall holistic immune system, but if we had to pin it down, the sacred self-healing is that part of our system that can respond to spiritual imbalances, even if they affect, all these denser levels. But this is where it can be changed. Are you starting to see where this is going, guys? Are you starting to see that? If we now go a step further and investigate the energetic aspects, which I have combined here in the Sacred Self-Healing Nspirience, we have infused the self-healing, not just with the spiritual contextualization, but also with the energetic modalities, the energetic protocols to do that. Because I've brought the sacred self-healing into it. Sacred has to do with something that is even less tangible than spiritual, or mindful. It is something that takes place in the etheric, something that is, well, part of us, but not. It is the part of us that continues to exist, let's say, when we die. Some call it aura. There's a little bit of discrepancies with the descriptors, etheric self, auric self, many different directions here, but we all kind of mean the same thing. The etheric, what exists in the ether. Yeah, what surrounds us is still tied to our body, to our mind and emotion and our spirit. But it can exist without body, mind, and emotion. And in, classical sort of religions or spiritual teachings, it's sort of simplified as something that we imagine as a soul. Yeah, when we imagine the dying process, you can see this in movies, then we imagine that there's something like that soul part, those 20 grams or milligrams, I forgot now, don't quote me on that, that leave our body, okay? We can imagine that to be our soul. Yes, and light body is part of that confusion. Light body is a very undefined word. Okay, it just really says that the part that is not matter, that would be light. But what adds to the confusion is that 97% of us is actually not matter. The space in between the matter, if you look at it from an atomic level, is light information. So technically, it's all of us. Yeah, we are just sort of a conglomerate of different light frequencies. Yeah, with electromagnetic dynamics, thermodynamics. Yeah, the greater and the smaller forces. So the word light body is kind of like a blah blah word. It's not very scientific because it really just says, all that does not matter. But if you look at it from an energetic point of view that sees everything as energy, then the word light body doesn't really seem to fit anymore, because even our matter, okay, is really just a certain frequency, and therefore we're ultimately composed of those different frequencies, if you will, which is why my tagline is everything is energy, because from an energetic perspective it really is. Yeah, and it's not wrong, but it is something that I prefer to refer to as the etheric body. Yeah, so it is more or less the energetic reality of yourself. Essence, Denise, brings in specifics and also judgments. I wouldn't call it essence. I would because it's not always the essence that you see in the etheric. You also see all your incongruences, all your disharmonies and everything. So the etheric is just more or less sort of the energetic mirror of the 3D version of ourselves. Yeah, so where the mental body produces sort of a virtual reality, yeah, and the spirit creates a spiritual reality. In the energetic, we see this in form of an etheric reality. And on this etheric level, and this is where Heather's sleep comes back in, it's very elusive for most people because they think it's something that they need to be able to see. And that's why, like in these last 30, 40, 50 years of New Age, all kinds of descriptors came up with light body and auric body and astral body and all that to kind of describe something that isn't, you can't really take a photography of it. Even aura photography is not depicting really the etheric. It is something that needs to be experienced from within, and it is something that we have a sense for. We call that sense our energetic sensitivity or energetic sense, and it's something that can be trained, that can be calibrated and refined to the point where we can literally see it, pinpoint it, work with it. That's what an energy worker can do. Yeah, and of course, even amongst all energy workers, because just like all healing arts, it's an art form. There's different kinds of energy workers, and different specialists and different qualities of energy workers here. So let's not forget that. But what if we follow this as a model here, even if we can't see this for ourselves? So remember, this is about you learning systematic ways of inquiry and self-discovery, so that you can know how to acquire those kind of abilities, which you all innately possess. You just need to train them. It's just like speaking a different language. Not all of you speak a different language, but you have the ability to do that. Okay, you'd have to train it. Okay. So how can we feel an energetic imbalance? How can we feel energetic imbalance? You guys are all energetically sensitive, energetically aware. Some of you are even energetically trained. How can we feel an energetic imbalance? And mind you, obviously, it permeates all these other levels of being. and therefore can influence all other levels of existence. Okay, Denise is saying through sensations. What kind of sensations? Feelings. Okay, here we have a little bit of a terminology problem again, because feelings, a lot of people equate feelings with emotions. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't put it all in one sentence. Yeah, what I meant is that through sensations or feelings or perspectives, we can, sensations, I mean, in the body, like if I'm not being, like if I feel squeech, that will be like a sensation that I feel in the body, but it's like it could
Okay, I think
relate.
I can help you out here, Denise.
Okay, thank you.
We call
Thank
this
you.
energetic sensation, right? I mean, it's
Sensing, right? Yeah.
an energetic sensation. So, and that could be anything from here. Julianne is offering a few things: heavy in the body, cloudy headed, right? And all the other energetic sensations that we are accustomed with, such as tingling, such as heat sensations. What else? What else? Give me lots of examples here for anybody.
Dizziness, bloodiness, feeling blooded, feeling,
Pains and aches. Yeah, Becky's saying, dizziness. Yeah, what else? Nausea. Yeah. Keep going, Denise. You can stay here. I like it better when you talk than when you write.
um, um, if I feel a pull, sometimes feeling a pull forward or a pull backwards.
Okay. So little pulls and tugs, or something where you feel asymmetrical in yourself, right?
Yeah.
Where you sometimes feel standing in front of yourself, or behind yourself, or above yourself, or below yourself, perhaps. Sudden emotions. Yeah, Becky's right. It can be emotions, especially if they're very sudden. Yeah, and that can be part of your energetic sensitivity. Yeah. What else?
Feeling the teeth.
What was that? Sorry.
Feeling the gum. Feeling the teeth
The
or the
heat.
gum.
Yeah, Julianne is saying feeling wiped out. We all know that one really well. Yes, drained, right? Literally drained of life force. Yeah, we might be physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually healthy, at least, according to certain standards, without major imbalances, but we can feel really drained. Our life force can feel drained. That's an energetic sensation. Yeah, and we can feel it in motivation too. Perspectives, yes. An energetic sensation can literally feel like optimism or pessimism. Yeah, walking in molasses. I think Julianne is bringing these very vivid pictures here, how this can feel energetically when whatever it is, it's often not defined. We can, only learn through building this lexicon of sensations that I always mention. Yeah, we have to calibrate all this for ourselves, what this means. Yes, we can feel it maybe as expansion or constriction in certain areas of the body. And even light sensations. And does anybody ever had like sound sensations, which, as part of an energetic sensation? Yeah, things can feel very loud, right? Very loud all of a sudden. It's not that our ears have changed, it's just that our sensitivity has changed. But also we can literally hear things.
And the smells or taste.
Yes, smell or taste. And the one big part that everybody kind of sees as the proof of energetic sensations, you haven't even mentioned: seeing things.
Yeah.
seeing things. Yeah, that's an energetic sensation too, right? It's funny. Everybody, always thinking that they're not really energetically sensitive because they're not seeing anything, that you guys haven't even mentioned it. Okay, yeah, because it's only just a tiny little part. Yes, Justine, precognition, like the seeing something or feeling something ahead of time, or even déjà vus can be part of that. Although déjà vus can also be explained psychologically, but a precognition of any kind, having an impression of something that hasn't happened yet. And again, precognition can come in any way, either through a vision or through hearing something or through tasting or smelling or hearing or sensing something in the body. Yeah, can come in all these different ways. So energetic sensitivity is a big part of that signaling system in us that can inform us about balances or imbalances. And here feeling like molasses, feeling drained, is probably one of the major complaints of energetically sensitives. Okay, as one of those ways to identify that something is energetically imbalanced. Now, what do you think could be called our energetic or etheric immune system then? If this all plays out in the etheric and we can sense it through any of these other levels, but if that's just sort of the outer signal, but not the cause, okay? If that's just informing us about something that is happening in the etheric, do you guys think that we have something like an etheric immune system? Yeah, so you guys are all answering. Yes, Justine, you say yes, yeah. And some of you are answering with modalities already, how to increase energetic or etheric balance. But what do you think, or how do you see that is actually recreating etheric balance? That's a good question, isn't it? Of course, I'm teaching etheric balancing techniques, etheric immune techniques. Yeah, etheric protection is nothing but etheric immune protocols, etheric immunity. But what do you think, if this takes place on an etheric level, what influences that? Unless you are consciously trained as an energy worker, like many of you are, and after all, this whole entire course is about that. Do you think that it is actually you that does that? The you, what you perceive as your aware you? No. Yes, Julian, it's expressed in our state of being, but that is not the part. Aha, Denise is mentioning something like grace here. What is grace? Etherically seen. From an etheric or energetic standpoint, what is grace?
Is it a unified self, like the unified mother, child, mother, father, and child in us, our sacred self?
Okay. It is a state in us that we can achieve if we unify some parts in us that we can identify as fragmented or imbalanced. Okay, I give you that. But is that really us? I mean, when we talk about grace, we talk about universal healing frequencies, universal. I don't want to give it away, but I want you to come to that conclusion yourself. Yes, Julianne, you getting closer. You said grace moves through us. There is a word, yes, Justine, exactly. There's a word we often use in conjunction with grace, which is divine. Yes. Yeah, you're getting there all. The dog's answer, yeah. Yeah. It's my favorite joke. The word dog backwards is God. That's why everybody should have a dog. Yeah, it's all backwards. The divine. Okay, so the divine. All right, so what do we mean with, yes, there is a divine essence in all of us. We can see ourselves as part of the divine. And if you think back of the definition of harmony, it was defined as something being a chord, something playing together, something, being aligned, something being in agreement. So if we learn how to consciously be in agreement with the divine or some kind of universal, some call it source or whatever, sort of overall hierarchy, okay, then we seem to be able to reinstate something like etheric balance. But do you think that without that awareness, that we still have something like an etheric immune system that takes care of us? I mean, we all know lots of examples of people who are energetically extremely imbalanced. We also know people, or maybe you don't, but I do, who are energetically pretty balanced, but they have never heard anything about grace or divine or any of these terms that we are working with here as we are taking all this apart and putting this back together. There is a part in us that takes care of us etherically. We have something like an etheric immune system, but our etheric immune system is not inside of us. Our etheric immune system is around us, and it is not just us, like the me part. It is the me part, and in its higher expression, the I am awareness in me that can align to that which does the healing, okay? Yeah? That we often call something like our divine nature. Yeah, because we recognize that to be the highest level of harmony there is. When something is in, yes, it's the I am part in us that can align to that. And the more congruent that becomes, the more effective our etheric healing capabilities become. But even people without this kind of training have something like an etheric immune system. And that happens when we sleep. This is the part here why I wanted to exclude that earlier, because obviously the sleep has a lot to do with our neurological, our metabolic and biochemical health, and with it also our physical, emotional, mental health, and also our spiritual health, because it permeates all of them. But the actual etheric place, the etheric rebuilding, the etheric reinstatement of balance happens when we sleep. It happens when when that luminous body, that light body, that etheric us that we are, that can exist without the body, or that persists beyond the body, when that part of us goes out of the body and rebalances itself with the help, and this is the important part here, any intuitive healer kind of knows that, but usually doesn't know why, with the help of these spiritual etheric beings that are there, that, you know, some of which we call grace, some call them angels, some call them, you know, beings, nature beings. There's different hierarchies of etheric entities that are responsible for different parts of the healing of our etheric. But it is something that is absolutely not tied to our body or our ego or anything like that. It does, however, and this is the part here where it becomes really interesting when you get into etheric surgery and this etheric energetic healing, it does reflect in a person's etheric. In other words, we can see that those of us who have access to or who have trained that, okay, the state of etheric support, the state of etheric balance a person is in. Yes, it happens between a certain, yes, according to our rhythms here in this 3D reality. Julianne is commenting here as a professional health practitioner, you know, in the time between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. This is, you know, just a correlation. It's different for everybody. It has a lot to do with the energy management of a person. So the more energetically aware a person becomes, the more you can tweak that, the more you can work with this. Yes, but I like how you define this here in the chat, Denise. You say it's like we go home to heal, and that's actually literally how that looks like. And that's why there's so much that happens at night or when we sleep. And that is also the reason, guys, why meditation and transmissions, why those are so important. Because it is, after all, the energetic level that permeates all these other levels of existence, these other levels of well-being. And that is why somebody can heal him or herself. We call this self-healing, but really what it is a form of energetic healing. The more person is aware, the more effective it becomes. The example with the physical doctor that helped the patient through spiritual empowerment helped, yes, exactly, Becky. He helped that person to see the bigger picture and to remember that there is something like an alignment that when it gets out of balance, that can tip the scale. And not just affect the person mentally or emotionally, but physically. And this is the reason, guys, why energy healing is the future. Because the more we are observing this happening subjectively, the more this gets investigated, trained, and taught, the more we understand, or the better we understand our human condition, really just as a state. So what I'm offering you here with this sacred self-healing experience is the energetic perspective, namely that any of these levels of well-being, these levels of existence, can be altered through your energetic volition. You just need to learn the tools to do this effectively, because of course all these things can be in the way, as Justine recognized earlier, that if any of these is out of balance, this is a constant sort of ebb and flow. These all interact with another, but the highest hierarchy is the energetic, because that can permeate them all. So here a bit of a visualization for all of you, because there's a new word here that I'm bringing in. It's integrity, inner integrity, as a way of measuring this harmony within ourselves. And here's something that all of you who are familiar with holistic healing and holistic perspectives are familiar with, namely that there is, of course, two components to imbalance, just like as there is two components to healing. The two components of imbalance are obviously what you let in, or what comes in, and the ground that it falls onto, the condition that you're in. The same is the same. What you let in and what you put out, those are amplifiers basically, and they determine, based on the condition that you're in, the state that you're in, these different aspects of your complex composition. Okay, so these two aspects that we need to look at when we look at imbalances is, what did I let in, what did I put out? That's one aspect. And the other aspect is, what condition was I in? Was there a fertile ground that these things that I let in or that I put out for this imbalance to grow? Was there fertile ground? Yeah. Was there an imbalance already, maybe in my condition, so that what I let in could further set me off balance? Because sometimes, as you all know, there are things that happen in your life when you are in a very balanced place, when you're very grounded, when you're very consolidated, where they don't faze you that much. The best example is with our physical condition. Okay, when we are in a healthy state overall, all these terms that are flying around, they don't do anything to us. But mind you, if you're going through an emotional crisis, or through a spiritual crisis, or through some kind of mental crisis, or existing physical crisis, then the very same thing can make you severely sick. And that's why this power of intention and what we align ourselves to and what we energize is so important to observe, as well as what condition we are in, what state we are in. Those are the two things that we need to watch, because they constantly fluctuate, they constantly oscillate. And our job is to maintain a balance here, so that our overall system can stay harmonic. So all our thoughts in regards to good and bad and all that is not sufficient, because our ego, our emotions, our mind can say, oh, this is really bad. Okay, but overall, aesthetically, it can be a very healthy, very important process that we're going through. Best example here is a healing crisis. When somebody goes through a healing crisis, the phenomenon, what they subjectively experience, often temporarily gets worse, because there's a lot of release that happens, and that doesn't feel comfortable to our ego, and so we resist. the process. So when we resist the healing process, we call that suffering. Okay. Now, not to say that that there isn't that suffering isn't real. No, but we have to differentiate. Pain is real. Pain is real. That can be measured. Okay, but suffering is not necessarily real. It might appear as real subjectively, but it can also be the consequence of not being aware of where the imbalance is. And when you look at this tree here, okay, that is just supposed to show, the complexity of our well-being, yeah, and the stem being, sort of what grounds us, okay, the self-awareness that can help us, yeah, to even become aware of things such as intention or goal or self-vision, yeah, and also the expressions, because there's an interaction between all of these things, right? So it's not just enough to look at one thing. It's not just enough. Hang on, guys, there's one missing here. To doctor with one of each of them. It's all of them together, because they all influence another. They all play together. It's a constant in and out. And in between all of them. Now you might think, oh my God, how could I ever, control all of this? Anybody thinking this right now? Oh my God, this is like, where's the integrity part here? But the integrity part is to be aware of that, not to control that. This is where our ego goes wrong. Our ego says, oh, I need to control all of them, aha, and that is then integrity. No, it's not. It's a constant come and go. I love the picture, the image that you created earlier, Julianne, like the ebb and flow, like the in and out, the in breath and the out breath, the inhale and the exhale. It's a constant flow between inner and outer condition. So we can conclude that there is a bunch of things that influence, a bunch of factors that determine our balance, our overall harmony, and with it, our overall health. Outer conditions, conditioning, and family stuff, our past, people, peers, relationships, co-workers, spaces, places, living condition, living situation, but also collective conditions, even weather, rhythms, cycles, stages, right? Those are all outer conditions. Can we influence them? A little bit, right? A little bit. But then there's also the inner conditions, right? The state of our nervous system, the state of our metabolism, our physiology, our emotional state, our emotional processing, our beliefs, our self-image, expectations, and expressions. Yeah, they all are influencing our state of balance, and they're influencing another. So if you now look at the parts that you actually can control and the parts that you can't control. Yeah, and this is I'm just offering a little bit of relief here for your mind. These are not scientific values. Yeah, they're based on my own observation, how much influence we can actually have on any of these factors that determine our inner state of harmony. 20%, that's as good as it gets. I mean, we can make decisions such as walking out of a relationship or moving to another place, changing our diet and so forth. Those are things that we can do on the outer level. Yeah, but you know, we cannot really determine weather. We cannot determine lunar cycles. We cannot determine political cycles of governments. We cannot determine other people's states. Yeah, things that you know surround us. We cannot really determine them to a big degree, and neither inner conditions. There's changes that we can do, like you know, sleep more, you know, work on our metabolism and all that to improve that. We can work on our emotional processing. We can work on you know, just studying things, learning, gathering knowledge, and so forth. But really, where our power lies is in self-awareness, because all of these things together, they come together here in our self-awareness. Somebody said, or many of you said last time, a couple of minutes ago, being present with ourselves, that is what self-awareness is. And ultimately, this is what we train here in sacred self-healing, is to become more present with ourselves so that we can be more aware of all these things. And remember, guys, what you used as a descriptor for not being in harmony with ourselves. I think Denise, I don't know exactly, said not being able to be present. Becky said feeling disconnected, feeling separated, feeling alone. Yes, that has to do with the state of our self-awareness. So as much as I talk about the physiological and the emotional and the mental components of all of this, and relationships and communication and all that, but it is the actual self-awareness, that power of inquiry, that power of coming to our own insights, that does it. And here, just for those of you who've been studying energetic states, who are familiar with Dr. Hawkins's work, who gave us a little bit of a scale, of a measuring tool for energetic states and their power, and how they express here my rendering of it, and simple contextualization of the significance of that map of consciousness and what we can use it for. What we typically call ego states are all states that are informing us of an imbalance, but they're also, I don't know if this is actually a proper English word, but they're also disbalancing us if we energize them. If we align ourselves to those, we are actively creating more imbalance, if you will. And it isn't until we go into that truth that we realize that it is in our self-awareness to change that, and that we have the power, and that yes, it takes a lot of courage, and yes, it takes a lot of acceptance and forgiveness work and all these reconciliation protocols and techniques that we're learning here in the Sacred Self-Healing course. But each and every step is a protocol that helps you to rebalance on a different level of existence, often so intricately interwoven that you can't even separate it. Yeah, the first 6 steps are the most general ones, and then we go into like deeper aspects of it with the inner child, masculine, feminine, use the chakra model, we do karma work, we use it with fear and pain, and so forth. We work with our relationships until we reach that working really with the higher vibratory energies that we find here, that allow us to actively induce healing and abundance and joy in life. And you guys all know what that roadmap looks like. It's this roadmap of higher learning, higher thinking, and higher being. Yeah, with training all these different aspects of that till we finally reach, not like as an accomplishing, but as an, you know, opening this up for ourselves, because we all have the potential for that in us. Higher consciousness. And higher consciousness is literally when we are working in unison, in synergy with all these etheric energies, beings and entities, yeah, that we are surrounded by. Nature, Gaia, divine, angels, all of them. So here a picture that many of you are familiar. I use this in a lot of different contexts. Yeah, it's the teaching of balance. Christians would say it's the teaching of Jesus. New Age would say it's the teaching of the soul self. Yeah, it doesn't matter how you look at it. It's all fundamentally the same. The harmonics are the same. There's a constant inhale and exhale. There's a constant accumulation of something and a constant release of something. On the physical level, on the emotional level, on the mental level, the spiritual and the etheric. And when there's an imbalance, when there's too much accumulated, when there's too much stuck in us, when there's too much, the whole system, our whole system becomes imbalanced. And when there's too little, yeah, when we drain too much, then there's also an imbalance. So reinstating balance is the active process of aligning ourselves to harmony. And this is here in the energetic, what I often call rebuilding or restructuring. So just for all of you to bring this into context, there is a worksheet here. I will send this with the recording. It's a worksheet from the step 24, where you can start working this out for yourself systematically. So this concludes the lecture part here, guys. Does anybody want to ask questions, comment? It got very quiet here. All right, guys, then I want to thank you very much for spending your time here. Yeah, this hour and a half. We're on time today. Yay. One of the few times. Yeah, and this went really, really deep. A deep contextualization of what harmony, what health, what balance actually means. And by guiding you through this investigative process, this self-inquiry here, I have taught you how to do this for yourself. Always remember, when you go to a medical doctor, when you go to a therapist, when you go to a body worker, when you go to a pastor or a priest, or when you go to an energy healer, it isn't them that does the healing. It's them holding the space for you, empowering you, or reminding you to go into a higher state of harmonic, to go into a higher harmonic, into a higher vibratory state that activates your self-healing. And ultimately, it is that etheric rebuilding that constantly happens with every thought, with every action, with every expression, with every mental image, with every projection, with every body language, all beliefs, all behaviors. They all contribute to this overall state of harmony or disharmony. And healing practitioners are there to empower you, to remind you, to motivate you, to help you to align yourself to that again. And what is it that you need to align yourself to? Not that you're insufficient, that there's something missing, that you need to accomplish something in order to know, to remind you of your own wholeness, to remind you that healing is nothing but reinstating your most natural state, the state of harmony. Thank you. Love you guys. Feel honored to accompany this, to guide you through this year, and to remind you all of this miraculous self-healer that you all are. See you soon. Bye-bye.